Okay, I think we're live. So thank you everybody for joining. I haven't had a chance to see who's joining us yet. I know the number is slowly ticking up. So we will get started right away, I think. To start, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of our friends and colleagues of the Mayor's Migration Council, and thank you for joining us for this really special event entitled 22 by 2022, a global movement to support local action on inclusive pandemic response through the Mayor's Migration Council's Global Cities Fund. For those of you who don't know me, I'm sure there's many of you on the line. My name is Samer Saliba. I'm the head of practice at the Mayor's Migration Council, manager of the Global Cities Fund for Inclusive Pandemic Response, and most importantly for today, the MC for the program and your host or co-host for today's event. Before we begin, as always with Zoom webinars, please note that today's event will be in English with simultaneous French and Spanish interpretation. It works the same as always, but for those of you unfamiliar, please click the globe at the bottom of the screen to select your language. Let me do so myself because I have not selected English. And we also encourage you to both use the chat function for any comments you may have about today's discussion, and the Q&A function to ask questions of our fantastic speakers who we'll be introducing a little bit later on. So now that you've all heard that for the 4,000th time since March of 2020, let's get started. Launched in partnership with IOM, UN Habitat, UNHCR, and UCLG, the Mayor's Migration Council's Global Cities Fund for Inclusive Pandemic Response directly resources city governments to support migrants, refugees, and internally displaced people in municipal COVID-19 response and recovery efforts. We have 5 current city grantees, 2 of which you'll hear from today. And today's event is really meant to drive additional international investment, and a word that I'm going to emphasize a lot today, partnerships, to the unmet resource needs of governments, meaning our joint commitment to support 22 cities by the end of 2022. During this event, you'll hear opening remarks from the MMC's Executive Director, Vittoria Zanuso, learn about the Global Cities Fund Project Prospectus, which we've been working tirelessly on in partnership with 20 cities from around the world, and we're very proud to launch today, and listen to a discussion between our fantastic panelists of the Global Cities Fund mayors and its supporters. But before we get to the remarks, we all know that pictures speak louder than words, so that's exactly where we'll start. If my team could please pull the video, which it is, and we'll watch this 20-minute clip that we've prepared for you.
Cities have always been crossroads where people from different places and different backgrounds come together to create a vibrant mosaic of culture, opportunity, and progress. But the pandemic has disproportionately affected urban areas, where more than 95% of all COVID cases have occurred.
Within cities, migrants, refugees, and internally displaced people have been hit hardest.
Cities and their leaders, committed to inclusive policies and services, worked quickly to meet the needs of their communities. Across the world, mayors stepped up to protect all of their residents regardless of migration status, providing equal access to COVID testing, direct cash assistance, water and sanitation services,
and more in the communities that needed it most. But in this unprecedented crisis, cities' needs far exceeds their resources.
Sometimes lacking the full regulatory authority needed to act, facing increasing needs from different marginalized groups, and shrinking budgets.
That's why the Mayor's Migration Council and its partners have stepped in to channel international resources where they're needed most.
Cities. With support from the MMC's Global Cities Fund, a first group of 5 cities from across the globe are serving migrants, displaced people, and other marginalized residents through city-led projects, ensuring an inclusive, just, and green recovery.
Cities and their people, their leaders and residents are in the best position to be drivers of that recovery.
But they can't do it on their own. The pandemic hasn't just taken a human toll on cities, it's devastated them financially as well. To build back better and achieve an inclusive global recovery, national and international leaders must invest in local action. Help us fund 22 cities by 2022. Because the road to a global recovery that lifts up everyone runs through our cities.
So there you have it. It takes a special kind of hubris to follow up a video that has your own voice with your own voice, but I'm very thankful for my teammate, Eugenia, in the Freetown City Council for also lending her voice to this project. I recorded in New York, she recorded in Freetown. And I think just a small detail, I think it really shows the kind of partnerships that we're after at the Mayor's Migration Council, hand in hand with the cities that we work with. So today, and my colleagues will put the link in the chat, to help us drive progress towards 22 by 2022, the MMC is launching, as I mentioned, the Global Cities Fund Project Prospectus. The Project Prospectus puts forward 20 city-led projects of their own design with the potential to directly serve over 140,000 migrants, refugees, internally displaced people, and marginalized receiving community residents. With resources channeled through the fund, these projects are ready for investment of donors, but just as importantly, the partnership of humanitarian and development practitioners who are active within these cities. We have many cities who have joined us on the call today, and I really just want to take the moment to personally thank them for trusting the MMC with elevating your top priorities for the most marginalized people within your cities. You can download the report at the link and read about each one of these fantastic projects individually. But in total, these projects put forward inclusive plans, policies, and programs valued at just over 10.5 million US dollars, about $75 per direct client, but with millions more offered by these cities in kind by implementing city governments to ensure that these projects are successful and sustainable, not only in terms of short-term impact, but setting the long-term foundations for inclusivity within these cities. And I truly believe each one of these cities has that willingness and that ambition. But simply stated, the purpose of the prospectus and today's event, especially on the heels of World Refugee Day, is to inspire city governments to continue to elevate their tireless on-the-ground efforts for migrant and displaced communities to an international audience, as we're doing today. Inspire international donors and practitioners to work hand in hand with cities in supporting local action through partnerships, and inspire international investment to address unmet resource needs of city governments. And to inspire us all, I'm very happy to turn it over for opening remarks to my dear friend and the Executive Director of the Mayor's Migration Council, Vittoria Zanusso. Vittoria, please.
Thank you, Summer, and thank you for everything you did to make today possible and the Global Cities Fund possible. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be your co-host for today. I'll start by saying that I think the video did a great job at explaining through powerful images and, of course, the powerful voices of Summer and Eugenia, how COVID-19 has been fundamentally an urban challenge, how migrant and displaced communities have been hit particularly hard, and how mayors have stepped in when many nations step back. What may have not come out so clearly from the video is the story behind the images, in the backstage. How did we as the Mayor's Migration Council got to today? So I'll just focus my brief remarks on this story. When the MMC was set up as a standalone organization in late 2019, thanks to the leadership of the Open Societies Foundation as an incubator of this effort, we were meant to be a diplomatic unit, advising mayors on how to engage in international policy making, but not necessarily delivering on-the-ground technical assistance and municipal access to finance, for sure. So when COVID-19 hit, just a few months later, just a few months after we were established, this completely disrupted our world and our environment, as I'm sure it did for all of you in your different capacities. Now diplomacy was to be done virtually, municipal budgets were shrinking exponentially, and urban migrants and refugees faced more risks and inequalities than ever before. In the face of all of this, we could not turn our heads to the other side, of course. We had to adapt and expand our mission to respond to these new demands. And that's when our leadership board mayors, including the mayor of Freetown, Mayor Yvonne Aki-Sawyer, who you will be hearing from in just a bit, decided to turn this crisis into an opportunity and organized a global campaign to call out major gaps in international funding systems and in the market for humanitarian and development assistance. So it's thanks to this mayors-led advocacy that Mayor Yvonne and the others led that in record time, we secured the seed investment needed to launch the Global Cities Fund 6 months ago in January 2021. Fast forward to today, and we have an incredibly strong cohort of city grantees supported by a stellar pool of international donors. Thank you, OSF, for believing in us as the first one, and partners. And here, when I talk about partners, I'd like to thank Emilia Saiz from UCLG, Antonio Vittorino from IOM, Filippo Grandi from UNHCR, Maimouna Mohd Sharif from UN Habitat for taking this bet with us and joining us as strategic partners at the beginning of this adventure. Now I'd like to quickly share what I think are the most exciting features of the fund. Why should we care? First, it channels international resources directly to cities. By doing so, it builds what we call precedents of fiscal feasibility in those municipal governments that are often disregarded by donors with low risk tolerance. At this round, we are taking the risk. We are mitigating the risk, but this is in an effort to create a precedent and an experience so that next time cities can actually go alone and use this example to apply for grants independently. Second, this fund does much more than transferring funds. When city grantees enter our world or our system, sometimes we call it our machine, they automatically receive customized technical and advocacy support from Summer and our staff and from our strategic partners, so that their experiences are strong on the ground, but also elevated at other levels. And third, this fund respects the agency, authority, capacity of city governments. Too often, donors are looking to fund the next big, bold idea through challenges, competitions, and whatnot, while in fact, what's needed is to better connect existing supply with existing demand. We have the resources, we have the need. Sometimes it's just a matter of connecting that. And we do that by curating a pipeline of vetted projects, proposals that are of cities' own designs, as Summer said, designed by them, for them, and to address their own needs. We put very, very little parameters because it's not our job to do that. And it's when international donors work with city governments as equal partners, not around them, as Mayor Aki-Sawyer said at some point, that the magic happens. As a member of the selection committee of our inaugural round of funding, I was personally very impressed with the quality of the project designs that we received from cities, how migrants, refugees were framed as partners rather than passive beneficiaries, and of course, how each proposal was backed up by each city's mayor. I remember sitting on this phone call with Mayor Aki-Sawyer, but also Mayor Itani, to discuss the intention, their intention for this fund, and that was very powerful and very convincing. And it's by appreciating the ethos of the fund that I really want to close my remarks by dedicating today's celebration to Mayor Bruno Covas of Sao Paulo, who passed away just last month. As a founding member of the MMC, Mayor Covas not only advocated fiercely to make this Global Cities Fund a reality, he was part of that campaign that helped us secure the funding for this fund. He also inspired countless mayors around the world to work with migrants, refugees as equal partners in the governance of their city. And so it's with this that me and my team dedicate our personal commitment, our sweat and tears, our nights awake for this. We dedicate our commitment to achieve our 22 cities by 2022 goal to Mayor Covas. I hope all of you will join us and help us turn this ambition into a reality. Now back to Summer and the mayors and our excellent panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Tori. Very well said. I think let's get right to it. I think we have such a fantastic panel that I don't want to waste any more time. So coming to this distinguished panel of both city mayors and supporters of the Global Cities Fund, I see they all have their videos on. We have with us today Mayor Yvonne Aki-Sawyer of Freetown, a current grantee and a leadership board mayor of the Mayor's Migration Council. Thank you for joining us, Mayor Yvonne. We have Mayor Jamal Itani of my parents' hometown, Beirut, Lebanon, who has led Beirut through one of its most difficult years on record, which is saying a lot for the city of Beirut, and whose city currently benefits, along with Mayor Aki-Sawyer in Freetown, from the Global Cities Fund. And we have Mayor Daniel Quintero of Medellin, Colombia, one of the Prospectus cities included in the Prospectus, and home to an estimated 90,000 Venezuelan refugees and asylum seekers. And Mayor Quintero has been showing tremendous leadership in support of all marginalized residents within Medellin. Our supporters, we have Dr. Colleen Thuez, Director, Welcoming and Inclusive Cities Division, International Migration Initiative of the Open Society Foundations. I've never said that all at once. That's the first time they're saying it all at once, Colleen. But OSF is an institutional founder of the MMC and a key reason for the Global Cities Fund's existence. Colleen, thank you so much for joining us. And lastly, Sarah Smith, lead of the Hilton Foundation's Refugees Initiative and my former and forever colleague of the International Rescue Committee, where we worked together for 6 years. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. So Colleen, let's get right to it. Starting with you, and given how important the OSF has been a founding supporter of both the MMC in 2018 and a seed investor of the Global Cities Fund, Tori used the word bet. And I think it's a really good word to use on an initiative like this. So what led you to bet on this new funding instrument and on the MMC to deliver? And I'm curious also, how your perspective on the fund has changed now almost a year into its existence.
Thank you, Summer, and thank you, Victoria, for this invitation. And I'd like to acknowledge the other very distinguished panelists, including the mayors of Beirut, Medellin, and Freetown, and my fellow sister colleague from the Hilton Foundation. I also just want to join Victoria and the MMC team in my deep appreciation, respect, and sorrow with the loss of Mayor Bruno Covas. The team from Sao Paulo was absolutely one of the engines behind the creation of the MMC and the advocacy work in particular on the global compact for refugees. And so a terrible loss for the community of city leaders, and I join in my sorrow for no longer having Mayor Covas with us. So to get to your question, Samar, I'm actually quite thrilled to, in just a few minutes, talk about the support to the Mayor's Migration Council and to the Global Cities Fund from the perspective of a foundation. And here my audience, perhaps first and foremost, is other foundations, really encouraging them to consider this type of support that the Open Society Foundations has brought over the last years to the MMC and more recently to the Global Cities Fund. Might surprise some of you, it certainly surprised me when I joined the foundation world to learn that there's a lot of money out there. Money is not the first problem. The first problem is often around the great ideas, the visionary ideas, the world-changing, course-setting ideas that one might have difficulty finding. And I make this point because for me, the advocacy work has been quite relatively easy to make that city leaders, or cities and city leaders, mayors, are the ones that we should be looking to for bold, courageous, responsible, accountable, responsive ideas for how to approach inclusive development in their own communities. And time and again, we see this, from the panel of mayors that we have with us today, the one who I know most and best is the mayor of Freetown. And so when you look at the Transform Freetown agenda, you see an agenda that is working, that is courageous, both for her city, for Mayor Aki Sawyer's capital city of Freetown in Sierra Leone, but that is potentially a model for other cities across Africa and elsewhere. And so this idea of the Pearl, investing in the pilot, the prototyping in something that can become scalable is really an exciting proposition for foundations, and often one of the first things that a foundation is looking to do. A related point is that foundations, at least my foundation, Open Society Foundations, generally supports, as the founder has since the mid-80s, non-governmental actors, civil society actors. And a major change of the last years is to understand that civil society partners are often co-designers, co-implementers, co-conceivers with local government. And therefore to fund and directly support local government in these efforts is a way also to support civil society actors in their cause, and to really sensitize, inform, and educate private foundations to support local governments as they do support civil society actors. My second and final point is that once you have the vision and you're convinced about, who are the visionary people who are designing these major changes, these major ideas that foundations should be investing in, you quickly come up against the other big challenge, which is, what is the vehicle? What is the intermediary to help support that type of change at the local level? And that's where I'm so pleased that the Mayor's Migration Council has become this champion enabler for city governments, through the Global Cities Fund being the best example. As your executive director just mentioned a few minutes ago, when the MMC was first conceived, it was very much for that informing and changing policy at other levels of government through the wisdom, knowledge, and daily grind of city leaders. But you all, and Samar, I think this also speaks to you in the personification of your position within the MMC, understood that to communicate that vision, you have to show the action on the ground, both for those, your residents first and foremost, and to influence other levels of government. And that is exactly what the Global Cities Fund does. It supports actions on the ground that advance progress, that surmount the many challenges that the three cities certainly that are on this panel face, and that do so in a way that can only convince national governments, regional governments, international governance, that it has to be listening to what cities are doing and to support that work. So with that, I encourage, I jostle and nudge other foundations to step forward and start funding so that we get to 22 cities by 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Colleen. There are not enough verbs I think we can throw in there to get people to engage. I think it's so important. One thing that I think you mentioned that is really important is local governments can be a vehicle to working and supporting civil society sectors within these cities. Many, if not all, I think, of our current city grantees have a civil society partner helping them implement their projects. And one of the things that's highlighted in the prospectus is the implementing partners of the 20 city government projects that we put forward. And you'll see many both international and civil society partners mentioned there. And that's part of why we put it in the prospectus, is because we believe it's so important. But our first partnership and our first priority is with city governments. And I think one of the strongest partnerships that we have as the MMC, and it's mostly because of her tireless championing of migrants and marginalized people within her city, is with Mayor Aki Sawyer of Freetown, Sierra Leone, one of our inaugural cities. So Mayor Aki Sawyer, the city council is using the fund for a project that has three main goals: provide livelihoods to rural migrants who have come to Freetown in search of work, and there are many of them; address public health risks in marginalized neighborhoods; and as Colleen mentioned, contribute to your Transform Freetown plan. Could you tell us a little bit more about your project and why it's so impactful for the most marginalized people in your city?
Thanks, Emma, and good evening, everyone. I think I want to join Victoria and Colleen in just again taking a moment to recognize the role that Mayor Bruno played in all of this, and as a co-member of the MMC Leadership Board. So just wanting to say that. Yes, so our project is doing, as you said, those three things. And in fact, the first two, providing livelihoods and responding to waste management challenges, public health issues, is what makes the third one, because those two outcomes are within our targets for Transform Freetown. And what is it we're doing? We have used this funding to expand upon an existing intervention in the waste management space. Our city of 1.5 million people has exploded in population, very much driven by rural urban migrants. And sadly, because of other constraints, most notably a lack of development control, the fact that, and this is a theme that, you know, is one that I come up with a lot, the fact that building permit issuance and land use planning has not been devolved to the city. So we're responsible for the city, but the most important tool of urban management is not one that we have. The result has been an urban sprawl and the buildup of informal settlements, many of which provide the home for our rural urban migrants and our rural migrants. And when you find yourself in an informal settlement, you know, the word slum is used, but we tend not to use it here. When you find yourself in that setting, it's poor housing, it's poor sanitation, it's poor access to jobs, and everything else that really reduces your life opportunities. We, in 2019, as we're looking at the solution to what was a really significant waste management problem in the city, we decided on a model which would both provide livelihoods as well as help us to improve waste collection. So solid waste was at 21% collection in the city, and we wanted to increase that to 60%, but we didn't want to have the model that many people are accustomed to, big waste management trucks driving up and down, because we don't really have the roads and the access for it, but more significantly, because we came up with a model which would decentralize that and provide opportunities for our rural migrants to have work in this area. So we have a very simple system of tricycle carts, which has enabled already, with this funding from the Global Cities Fund, enabled an additional 240 young people to have work, rural migrants. And you know, when we started off back in 2018, 19, thinking this through, with the initial funding that we got 80 tricycles onto the road. This is giving us 50% more, another 40. And one of the things that's been so fascinating for us is that we started off trying to solve the sanitation problem, but we found through a survey that we did of those who came forward and wanted to be a part of this solution, we found that 75% of them were from the rural areas. And this was like a step up. This opportunity has given those people, male and female, because we have a percentage of women, it's given them dignity. It's given them life chances. It's given them the opportunity to actually employ other people. And it's most significantly because very recently, with all of what's going on, we actually had a death among that body of youth. And I went to sympathize with the family. And what I found, and I mean, I've been seeing this all along, but it was so strengthened at this time that it's given them community. So whether you're living in the Dwazak slum or you're living in the Mabela slum, us coming together and creating this platform of people standing up and having a livelihood, investing in their future. We have young people who are now running additional businesses, and some of them who are expanding this business. So this opportunity that has been created by the Global Cities Fund, by the MMC platform and with its partners, is really doing what we want cities to be able to do: have the space to impact lives in their communities, the most vulnerable lives, and in our case, our rural migrants.
Thank you so much, Mayor Aki Sawyer. Yeah, I mean, very well said. I have to say, it's been a pleasure working with your team on a daily basis. I hope it's okay that I say this, but just building off of what you were saying about community, I mean, for those on the line, Mayor Aki Sawyer's team has daily communications with project staff through WhatsApp, through community meetings. I get to be a part of one of these WhatsApp groups, which is just the greatest privilege of my career so far, I have to say. So there really is that sense of community building. And I saw Mayor Itani react when you were talking about the waste management project, because I think, you know, there's certainly a lot to be learned for Beirut, and there is a lot of learning that happens through the Global Cities Fund. Mayor Aki Sawyer, you may be happy to know that Kanifing in the Gambia, their project in the prospectus is based off of not your waste management project, but your tree stewardship project, which people can read about elsewhere. So lots of learning going on there. Turning to then Mayor Itani of Beirut, our other Global Cities Fund grantee. Very personal for me, Mayor Itani, given my ties to the city, my family's ties to the city, many of whom are listening today, just to be able to hear what you have to say. But over the past years, Beirut has endured compounding crises of COVID-19, political unrest, economic downturn, mass displacement from Syria, and then on top of all of that, the devastation caused, of course, by the August 4th explosion. During your interview for the Global Cities Fund in the inaugural round, you said to me that the money is important, but not as important as the partnership, especially for cities like Beirut, who are so often left out of the conversation. My question is, how has the MMC's partnership with the municipality of Beirut helping you recover from these crises in a more inclusive way?
Well, thank you, Samer, and thank you to the Mayor's Migration Council for your support and indeed your partnership. As you mentioned, Samer, there are few cities that experience the diversity and severity of the challenges that Beirut endured in 2020. In fact, it started late 2019, which was one of our worst years on record. Already coping with an unprecedented displacement crisis, where an estimated 1 in 4 people in Lebanon is a refugee, almost 1.5 million Syrian refugees in a country that has a population of 4.5 million. The city added an economic crisis due to political reasons and the COVID-19 public health crisis on top of it. Already strained by the demand on public services, the government of Lebanon, unfortunately, defaulted on its foreign debt. And that has resulted in a drastic decrease in the value of the Lebanese lira and a drastic increase in poverty levels throughout the country. Just to give you an example, Samer here, the Beirut municipality had in the bank an amount of money that was worth $600 million in October 2019. The same money still sitting in the bank is now worth only $80 million. So you can imagine the impact on the economics of the municipality. So these economic conditions worsened further with the onset of COVID-19, of course, which pushed 1 of every 3 Lebanese households into unemployment, according to the World Health Organization survey. These combined crises came to a head on August 4, the unfortunate date of 2020, when the explosion in Beirut's port killed around 200 people, injured more than 6,500, damaged 74,000 homes, approximately. We even have estimates of 85,000, maybe more accurate, and affecting nearly 300,000 people, out of which we have almost 80,000 people who were displaced again. So, and on top of the displacements that we have, including many refugees and migrant domestic workers. Also, the blast has affected the majority of the hospital and healthcare centers. We have more than 20 hospitals were severely damaged, as well as schools and other homes in the area, making it very difficult for the sector to survive, the health sector I'm talking about. Since then, Beirut's residents have struggled to receive the medical attention they need, both in aftermath of the blast and as the city continues to cope with the prevalence of COVID-19. Here, I'd like to mention that this is in addition to the municipality has intervened earlier and has built a field hospital that takes almost 1,000 people every day for checkups and medication and healthcare. Lately, Prime Minister Saad Hariri has also was engaged with the UAE, and they provided a field hospital also that's being put together now in Beirut to also help support the existing hospitals. Here's where the partnership of the Mayor's Migration Council comes in. With so many vulnerable Beirutis unable to access healthcare due to limited financial resources or the means to access private or public health facilities, the municipality of Beirut is bringing healthcare to them with the project that you have we work together on, with the support of the Global Cities Fund, of course. We have used the fund to purchase Beirut's first municipal mobile healthcare clinic, which we are proud to launch in the coming weeks, hopefully. The mobile health clinic will provide free and non-discriminatory COVID-19 testing and vaccines to individuals who are unable to access basic medical services due to lack of transportation, lack of finances, or other barriers to care. The clinic will go where it is needed. That's the beauty of the clinic. It's not built in one area where everybody has to come to that area and add more pressure on any specific area in Beirut. So the clinic will go where it is needed most. And we have established where it is required to go, in which form it should go. Focusing on neighborhoods with high populations of refugees or migrants and vulnerable Lebanese that were severely impacted by the August 4 explosion, such as the working class neighborhoods bordering the port. But as I told you in October, Samer, the partnership is just as important as the resources. We are over 10 years into Syrian displacement crisis in Lebanon, with hundreds of thousands of refugees residing in Beirut, with dozens of INGOs here to serve them, and too few partnerships to show for it. It is partnerships such as those the municipality of Beirut has with the Mayor's Migration Council, UN Habitat, and others that enable us to realize our plans to serve every resident of Beirut equally, being the refugees, domestic workers from Ethiopia, from Philippines, from Sri Lanka, or local Lebanese people. The needs of Beirutis are far too great for us to meet alone as municipality, especially in the economic and political environment.
Thank you, Marietani. I think, yeah, I have had I've been visiting Beirut obviously all my life, but having worked there since 2015 on displacement issues, quite frankly, it shouldn't take this long for these kinds of partnerships to come to be with the municipality of Beirut. Better late than never, but we certainly hope for more partnership, and that our partnership together engenders more partnership from other INGOs, development agencies, with directly the municipality of Beirut. We know the challenges at the national level, but at the city level, there's a lot that can be done under your leadership. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So we've heard from our two current grantees, 2 of our 5 current grantees. But as we know, and as the prospectus tries to highlight, there are hundreds more cities who are in need of financial and technical support to strengthen their efforts for migrant and displaced communities as the world collectively recovers from COVID-19. One of those cities is Medellin. And I'd like to turn now to the mayor of Medellin. This project is included in the prospectus entitled Housing Assistance for Migrant Populations. Mayor Quintero, thank you so much for joining us. To start, I know that it's still ongoing, especially within Colombia, but could you please describe how COVID-19 has impacted Medellin's financial and technical capacity to deliver services and to protect your residents?
Bueno, primero que todo, Samer, a todo el equipo de la Fundación de Ciudades Globales, del del equipo que ha estado acompañando este proyecto, pues darle las gracias primero que todo
Team
porque
that
su
has
ayuda ha
been
sido
taking care of this
fundamental en este
project, we want
proceso.
to thank them because their
Contarles
help has been
que cuando
fundamental.
inició la crisis de
When
COVID,
the
Colombia ya estaba
COVID
en una
crisis
crisis
began,
económica y
Colombia was
financiera.
already
Ustedes
in
han
an
podido ver en el
economic
mundo
and
lo que ha
financial
pasado en
crisis.
Colombia en los últimos 2 meses.
In
El
Colombia,
intento de
in the last
presentar
2
una reforma
months,
tributaria que
they've been trying
mejorara
to
las
present
finanzas del
reforms
país,
to
pues
better
resultó
the
en un
country's
levantamiento
financial
social
situation,
que vamos.
but it led to a social rise up and crisis in the country. So we had already been living a strong migratory crisis. We've seen a lot of Venezuelans in the last few years, and Medellin has been a great recipient of migrants. In Medellin, we have more than 90,000, and Antioquia, which is our state, has had 160,000. So when coronavirus crisis arrived, we closed everything for 3 months. The people most affected were the most vulnerable, of course, and that's where we face a challenge in priorities and budget. It's a humanitarian challenge. We wanted to help all of the people in the city as humans, even though we were getting pressure from political groups to support only Colombians. But in a crisis like COVID, we thought we are all human. We have to help everyone. And that's why we started to do night trips and the streets of the city. We would walk through and find families with children, with older people who were in the streets, who had been expulsed from the places where they had been living. And they were paying a daily fee to stay in like these little hotels just for a day. And these families were now just tossed aside. So we had to pick them up and take them to a big shelter at first and situate them, give them some financing to help get them into a house, at least during those first 3 months, which were really complicated, and in some cases for some months more. We've maintained them
Alors, ces personnes,
a crisis, and the most vulnerable people are the most affected, especially a lot of Venezuelans, not just Colombians. We think that the migratory crisis that has affected Colombia is the responsibility not only of the Colombians, but it's a global responsibility. And no country has the economic capability to handle this crisis alone. A lot of these families, for example, are afraid of the state because they think they'll be expulsed. So they don't look for help with their health or with food. Having this program was allowed us to say, you also have rights. Your children have rights. Your children have the right to eat. You guys have a right to eat. You have the right to health if you're sick. So to allow them to go through this program has been really important, not just to connect them with opportunities to have a place to sleep or a place to live, but also to be able to provide them healthcare, food, nutrition, and that's why this program has been absolutely necessary. We have social goals in terms of poverty. We're seeing more. It's shot up dramatically in our country. So we're making efforts to try to reactivate the economy and return not to the past, but to a better version of the past, a greener, more sustainable, and more humanitarian future. I think that's really important in times like this.
Thank you, Alcalde. Really appreciate your elevating your needs and the many needs that you're already addressing I think, with limited resources is truly remarkable and demonstrates your leadership. So thank you for that. But now we have a special guest joining us today, and I hope people haven't figured out why the Hilton Foundation is represented on this panel yet. But Sarah, as the lead of the Refugees Initiative Refugee Initiatives of the Conrad N. Hilton Foundation, do you want to save people further suspense as to why you're represented here today?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Summer. And it's really just an honor to be here with all of you today. Thank you so much, Mayor Zaki Sawyer, Itani, and Quintero for everything you're doing for migrants and refugees and internally displaced people in your cities. Yes, I'm here today on behalf of the Conrad N. Hilton Foundation to announce our contribution of $900,000 to the Mayor's Migration Council's Global Cities Fund and call to action to support 22 cities by 2022. And we're just so pleased to be able to nearly double the fund's initial amount by supporting a second round of city grantees. And similar to Colleen, I guess my role here is also to jostle and nudge. It's a very easy role, I think, given the inspiring stories we've heard and just all the really amazing work going on in these cities. With this latest contribution, the Mayor's Migration Council will work with the city governments of Addis, Kampala, Quito, and I'm especially happy to say Medellin, 4 cities included in the prospectus that Summer shared earlier. And these cities are really just so inspiring. I can't say anything more than what's already been shared. You've heard these amazing stories. And as Mayor Quintero just mentioned, all these cities are really stand out to me because of their commitment to all people in their cities. The commitment is about inclusive recovery and inclusive services. And it's really about building a strong foundation within cities to support displaced communities, but all people in the cities for the long term, not just short-term projects. So to give you one example, the Kampala Capital City Authority, they've been, showing leadership in supporting roughly 100,000 refugees in the city of Kampala for so many years. But this is really the first time that the city government will receive direct international assistance to support the needs of refugees. And with this support from the Global Cities Fund, the Kampala Capital City Authority will provide immediate relief and livelihood support for refugees, migrants, and urban poor families through what's known as the Kampala for All initiative, which is especially important now, of course, given that Uganda is in another lockdown because of COVID-19. And of course, we know that this disproportionately affects unregistered refugees in Kampala who fall outside of the national safety net programs often. And Mayor Quintero, I'll say we're so pleased that Medellin will be included in this round of funding. And we're just so grateful for your leadership and really eager to learn from you and what your teams are doing. I think the work, especially to help those who are at risk of homelessness have a roof over their heads, and expanding your housing assistance program to meet their needs. It's really remarkable, and we're really excited to watch how it unfolds. So please, others, we hope you'll join us and OSF in supporting MMC's Global Cities Fund. Maybe we can get to even more than 22 cities by 2022. Thanks all.
Sarah, thank you. And thank you to the Hilton Foundation. We are really happy to hear that. And we're gonna be working really hard for the rights and the future of the immigrants here in Medellin. We think we can build a better city, and that actual immigration can make us become stronger and to make our future be even better. Thank you, Sarah, and the Foundation.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Mayor Quintero. We're thrilled to be able to add 4 new cities and about 10 hours less sleep for me to the Global Cities Fund. We're really looking forward to it. And I've already had the pleasure, Mayor Quintero, of working with your team in preparing for this project. So we're really looking forward to it. And they've all been fantastic. And the teams of all of our mayors on this call have been fantastic. And I think, you know, we recognize your leadership, but I personally also want to recognize their leadership on the ground, doing the work, because it's really tremendous. So we're coming towards the end of the event. Maybe just to have a bit of open discussion for the mayors on the call. A question is, you know, what advice do you have? I like, Sarah, that you said that you look forward to learning from Mayor Quintero and Medellin's efforts. But I'm curious, Mayor Itani, Mayor Aki-Sawyer, just if you have any advice for international donors looking to work with your city, what's one rule of thumb that they should know in order to make that a true and equal partnership? Go ahead, Mayor Yvonne.
Thanks, Sama, and I'm glad you asked that question, because this is one of the things that Victoria mentioned and really stands out in the way that the Global Cities Fund is structured. It's truly a broad platform. So you're saying to the city, what do you need? And how can we work with you to deliver that? And in so doing, you're acknowledging that city authorities, because they are operating at that local level. Mayor Quintero just mentioned, you know, walking the streets and seeing the people and seeing the need and being able to respond directly. You know, Mayor Itani, you know, is talking about again, that closeness and a recognition of a physical closeness to people and saying, let's bring the medical facilities to you. You know, we have waste management challenges. I can actually say we had, because we're on a journey to address that. And we're able to do it by working very closely with the people who are most affected and helping them to become a part of the solution. And the reason we've all had such different responses is because the platform allows that. And that would be my advice, that no 2 cities are the same. We've all got really different challenges, and it's so helpful when the funding partner allows the authority to lead and doesn't sort of pigeonhole you into a box and say, well, give us a project proposal that meets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 criteria. Of course, there's got to be some criteria, but having that breadth and enabling the needs to be met, driven by the needs, as opposed to some other set of metrics, is really important. And Global Cities Fund has done that superbly. And we really look forward to more partners coming on board into this platform, which is already established.
Thank you, Mayor Aki-Sawyer. Mayor Tani, I'm curious if that resonates with you. You're on mute.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As Mayor Yvonne said, you know, working with you has and other also organizations, international organizations who have jumped in after the aftermath of the explosion of Beirut, has proved the effectiveness of such this kind of work and the fast response of the organizations to the need of the city. We are working very closely with UN Habitat and with the UNHCR, and they because they lived the issue, they worked closely with the city council, with us, with the municipality, And they went straight to the point and straight to the most difficult issues and tried to help over there. And this is what we need. A lot of countries try to help, but countries, they usually try to help globally over the country. They don't go to the specific need that not all the people know about. So again, I thank you very much for your intervention in Beirut, and I hope that this will not stop here. If this project proves feasible and gives, make a major impact on the lives of the migrants, I hope that we can probably expand on it. And as I told you, we have 2 hospitals built, or the municipality built one, and now the UAE is building one. And we are developing 2 clinics, major clinics through NGOs as well, in the devastated area and in areas where people are in a great need for help. Health is a major issue in Beirut today. Once we were the leaders in health services in the world, and now, unfortunately, Beirut is in need for medical support by all means.
Thank you, Maritani. Maybe the last quick question I'll put to Colleen and Sarah. So we started at 5, we're now at 9. We hope to get to 2022. Colleen, it sounds like you made a bet on us once. Would you bet on us to get there by the end of 2022? And what do you think, maybe in a few words, would it take for us to get to 22 cities by 2022?
Thanks, Emma. Well, here I'll speak in my personal capacity and say that as I started off talking about the role of foundations, I would say the responsibility of foundations is to make those big bets, to invest in places where others are not investing, to do so in a nimble, timely, decisive fashion. And so I'll turn the question around and say the way that we'll get to 22 is to really mobilize resources from others. And OSF commits itself to have those conversations and to convince other foundations and funders that they should get involved sooner rather than later.
Thank you so much, Colleen. Sarah, you don't have to come in. I'm curious if you have any thoughts as well. You're on. Yeah.
I'll just agree. Yeah, I think as Colleen said, the solutions are out there and the funding is out there, and it's about making that connection. And we are certainly committed to helping in any way that we can make those connections. And I'll just say that, I think especially for the mayors on this call and all of your teams out there, you're really serving as leaders, not just in your communities, but for the international community and the international response. And I think that leadership is something that we need to shout from the rooftops about more. And then I do believe that we can get to 22 cities for sure.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Mayor Aki Sawyer. Thank you, Mayor Itani. Thank you, Mayor Quintero, for joining us today. We really, really appreciate your leadership. I really echo Sarah's comments and Colleen's comments that we're the financial and the technical support. You're doing the work on the ground, and it's really a privilege, at least for me personally, to be able to work with each of your teams as implementers, and Colleen and Sarah with your teams as supporters. So thank you so much. At the end of the day, we're all committed to the lives of migrants, displaced, and marginalized receiving communities, and it really is through cities that I believe and have dedicated most of my career to improving those lives. So thank you all for joining me on that. Let's close now. Thank you all so much again. I think that's enough for me, but I'll turn it over to Tori to close the event.
Thank you, Summer. Congratulations to Mayor Aki Sawyer, Mayor Itani, for the successful implementation of your projects, and to Mayor Quintero for joining the Global Cities Fund family. Thank you, Colleen and Sarah, for championing our cause within your respective foundation and others. and for your faith in cities and the MMC to deliver on this frontier work. We will not have been able to set up such a robust system and machine, as I called it before, if it wasn't for our partners at UCLG, UNHCR, IOM, and UN Habitat. Thank you all for demonstrating to cities that the international community is there and is showing up for them as a united front, which is not a given. My deepest gratitude to all of the mayors and teams who submitted their project proposals and ideas for the prospectus and really trusted us to elevate their most pressing priorities in the service of their migrant and displaced communities. Last but not least, today's event, and most importantly, all of the great announcements that we could make today about the Global Cities Fund would not be possible if it wasn't for the two architects behind this initiative, Samir Saliba and Madeline Hill. Thank you. It's incredible to think that all of this could be put together by two people. And to all of you who joined us today, thank you. And let's keep in touch. Our commitment starts with 22 by 2022, but needs and potential goes well beyond this timeframe and this number. Today, we're supporting inclusive pandemic response, but tomorrow we could scale to inclusive climate action and beyond. The areas and topics are infinite that we could be tackling. Come to Samir and I if you are interested in working together. Good afternoon, good night, and see you next time. Thank you all.